everybody. I'm the coach of the Tigers Hockey Club. I just wanted to say thanks for everybody coming and for Josh helping organize this. I think this is a great thing. And also to the Knights parents for setting up that meal. That was perfect. That's right. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Josh.
All right, hey, so I think this is kind of a really cool thing that we're able to do together. Like when I had a coach once that when I was getting a bit older, like going through midget hockey and going into junior, he said to me, hockey becomes like 90% mental and 10% physical. And when we can start to figure out how to train our minds to be at peak performance and the on-ice stuff becomes so much easier. So I met Aaron this past summer. His son went to one of my camps, and then I started following his stuff online. Actually, a parent last year of the team that I was coaching gifted me his book called Fighter, and he has a few here. It's a really good book. It was actually like super inspirational for me to read as a coach, to find like different ways to inspire the team and stuff. So after reading the book, his kid came to the camp and started following him more online and realized like that he did engagements like this where he can equip you guys, like players, with tools that you can use not only for right now, but you can use like years in the future as you move on to go play junior hockey, you go play like U18 hockey, U15 hockey. The tools of visualization, controlling your mind, is so powerful. So like give him your full attention. And I'm just really stoked to have you here. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here, guys.
Just so you guys get a little bit of an intro, you're gonna watch a video.
Well, before you play that, Josh, he like sent me some clips. He's like, what do you think about me like doing a little video intro? And it actually reminded me of my son, who he's years younger than you guys. When he was 3, because I played before he was born, so he started to like develop his own passion for the game, and he got that I played, and he thought it was cool and all that good stuff. And he came up to me one day and he was like, "Hey, can I see some of your NHL videos?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And pulled up YouTube, and that's why when you texted me, I'm like, "Oh boy, what clip does he have on here?" And I remember like going through, and as you guys will find out, I didn't get paid to score goals, so I'm like scrolling, and I'm like, oh, maybe you should watch those ones. Like, what do I show my 3-year-old? And I mean, I showed him anyway. He watched them all now, but so I was like, oh, I don't know what you're gonna have up there, but but yeah, this one's good. When I had this moment after my junior year, when the coach, said, "Hey, you thought about playing pro hockey?" And I laughed and said, "No, a small town kid from Revelstoke, like I can play pro hockey. Like I can get paid to play the game I love." So naturally I thought back to my journey through the burn unit to come back to play hockey. And I just thought, like, if I can do that, why can't I go play in the NHL? I'm like, this seems a lot easier than what I did there. So then I said, well, let's fucking do it then. And that's when the idea of the movie really came to be. My first memories as a kid, and then to that experience in the burn unit, because that gave me a superpower, knowing that I overcame that. Like, again, I visualized that whole journey of what that would look like, walking onto the rink through the tunnel for that first game. That was my superpower. If I can get through that, like, I can do anything. Identifying where you want to go, and again, crafting or directing like that movie. What does that look like? What does it feel like? And then the more you can live in that, and the more you start changing your energy and your biology even. If you can create an experience with that visualization and paint a picture of where you want to go and what that looks like, then your body and your mind is naturally gonna think that's already happened. So that would be number one, is just identifying where you want to go and living in that, which then in turn makes those choices of sacrifice, obsession, all these things, hard work, a lot easier and non-negotiable for you. All right. Yeah, I didn't even know that video was on YouTube, so it was actually a book promotion. But guys, first of all, again, thank you for having me for this weekend. I'm going to talk to you about visualization like Josh said. This is meant to be pretty casual and fun and interactive, right? So if you guys have questions at any point, throw up your hand. Again, let's keep it light, right? Have some fun. And again, Josh said, you know, you guys spend all this time practicing and maybe training at your age, right? Or starting to maybe train. And that's a big part of it. But this, the mind and this visualization practice that I'm going to tell you more about, it's very powerful. And we know that sport is more mental than physical, right? And yet it's not practiced enough, so there's this big mismatch, right? So I'm going to, again, share and give you guys some tools how to leverage this, okay? It's meant to be educational, inspirational, and practical. So again, you guys are going to hopefully leave here with tools to put this into practice. Who am I? This is basically a list of who I was and who I am now. So everything towards the bottom there, my degree from Brown, burn survivor, which is going to be the meat of the story and what I'm going to talk to you guys about. And former NHL player. You got any Canucks or Capitals fans in here? Okay. All right. Yeah, good stuff. But those all play an equally pivotal role in, I mean, who I am today, but also what I teach as a cognitive performance coach. Okay? And again, my goal for you guys here, I don't really like to use the word goal, and I'm going to talk to you guys about that towards the end. But what I want you to take away from this, again, some inspiration, but the practicality, something to put into practice to drive positive change in your life and, you know, strive for that peak performance, right? Because athletes, that's what we want. We want peak performance, right? And again, this is a big part of that. So story time. I had to throw up a picture of me winning. I can't throw a picture of me getting punched in the face. If you guys haven't seen my nose yet, you'll understand that. I didn't win every fight, right? I'm not the biggest guy, but fought some big dudes. But I'm going to share with you how I went from that bottom picture to the top picture. Okay? And I like to say inadvertently unearthed or discovered this superpower of the human body and spirit through this accident when I was lit on fire. And I'm not talking about, you know, a ha-ha movie scene where the guy's pant leg or hat. You guys know the movie Home Alone? Have you seen that movie? You know when, I can't remember his name, what's his name? The short dude. Harry. When Harry's head's on fire and he gets thrown in the toilet, right, and you all laugh. Yeah, no, I'm talking about a scene out of a horror movie. A young man running through the barren woods on fire, losing a battle with a gas-induced inferno, as you guys can tell by the bottom picture. Now, I thought I knew what pain was up until this point in my life. I've been punched in the face hundreds of times, received hundreds of stitches, broken all the bones, you name it. This pain dwarfed all of that, right? And I will never go through pain like that, hopefully again in my life. I don't remember a lot in the days following the accident. In fact, I didn't even realize that I was in Vancouver when I woke up there the next day. So I was almost 20 years old, so I'm 19 turning 20, and I was playing for the Vernon Vipers of the BC League, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, right? Yeah. And I was chasing an NCAA scholarship. Okay, that was my NHL. So when I was your guys' age, I grew up in Revelstoke, and I wasn't that good. right? I was you guys, but I wasn't that good. I got cut from select teams, right? Played house hockey one year, and I eventually snuck into junior A with the Vipers as a fighter. And you know, that was a bigger part of the game then, and I happened to be okay at it, and that's how I got in. But when I was your age, I put the governor on that NHL dream. Do you guys know what I mean by that? Yeah? I basically said, well, I don't want to be naive here, and I realistically won't be able to do that. So I identified, again, the NCAA as my dream, my NHL, right? I figured Division I, Division III, I didn't care. Figured if I could go play hockey for another 4 years, get an education, that'd be pretty sweet, right? Now, I was also that guy. And like many of us at that age, the parents can probably relate to this one a little bit more, but I thought I was invincible, untouchable, right? I was always doing stupid things for adrenaline, attention. I was feeding a young ego and living up to that fighter stereotype and what I thought that should look like. And with that said, I was also a pyro. Do you guys know what that is? No? Basically means I was messing around with fire all the time. Again, like I told you why. I was just doing stupid stuff for adrenaline and attention and all these things, right? And on the night of this accident, I had almost 2 liters of gas spill on me in a stunt gone horribly wrong. Now, to put that in perspective, what I later learned in the burn unit, and you'd have to fact check this, but a liter of gas in itself is equal to like a few sticks of dynamite. So, not safe, right? My first real concrete memory in that burn unit came on day 3. Again, the first 3 days were pretty foggy. And I came out of my first procedure, which they have to put you under, so I'm under anesthetic. I come out of this procedure, and the doctor walks in the room. And he's going to relay my prognosis. Because up until this point, we didn't know how burnt I was. We knew it was bad, right? I was in Vancouver. At the time, there were only 10 beds in the burn unit, so it's 10 worst burns in the province. My parents, like at this point, they didn't know if I was going to make it. That's how bad it was. So the doctor walks in, and he immediately looks at my parents, and he's like, "It's okay, your son's not going to die. He's very lucky. This could have obviously been a lot worse. It doesn't look like his face is going to be permanently scarred, and we're not going to have to graft." Do you guys know what skin grafts are? Yeah, no? Basically where they take other parts of your body, they take the skin and they place it on the really bad 3rd-degree burn areas on your body. And he said, we're not going to have to graft over his joints, which is a very good thing, right? Because there's a lot of restriction with mobility as soon as you go over any type of joint. And again, he just said, he's lucky to be alive. We're going to focus on rest and pain management for the foreseeable future. And I think while my parents took some solace in the fact that, you know, I was eventually going to make a full recovery, all I could think about when he's talking is I have camp with the Vipers in like 3.5, 4 months, right? So to paint the picture for you, this was like a couple hours after the incident, so I'm totally knocked out, I don't remember anything. When I got to Vancouver, I was full mummy, head to toe, face, everything. So I asked the doctor, and I'm sure no one's ever asked him that, in the burn unit, wrapped like a mummy. I have little eye slits, my nose and my mouth are slightly exposed for the oxygen, right? And I asked the doctor this, you know, what does that look like? I have camp coming up. And I'll never, ever, till the day I die, forget the look on this guy's face. And he kind of just froze and was like, these recoveries take years, not months. Like, you're lucky to be alive. You're going to be in here for a long time, and it's going to be a long road. Like, we'll look at getting you in a pair of skates in a non-competitive environment in a couple of years. And right then, that's when I knew it was over. Actually, even before that, when I saw his face, I was like, oh shit, this is it. And so he, again, laid that gavel down with what he told me. And so in that moment, I kissed that dream goodbye, right? I mean, this doctor's seen countless burn injuries before, right? I didn't really realize what I was up against. And that was really my first 2 weeks in the burn unit, were these different emotions, right? On one hand, I was down and depressed. I mean, I was in a ton of pain, which I should have said first of all, but I was down and depressed about what my life was supposed to look like now, not as a hockey player, and the fact that I wouldn't be able to go chase that NCAA dream, right? But on the other hand, I was very grateful that I was, A, alive, and B, that I would make a full recovery. And obviously something changed, right? And that moment came 2 weeks into my stay in the burn unit, and I got a call from my coach in Vernon. And the phone rings. Remember, I'm totally bedridden, like a mummy. And so my parents grab the phone, they stick it between my ear and my shoulder, and I have this talk with my coach. And he said, how you holding up? And I was like, well, been better, obviously. And he said, listen, I was just talking with one of the coaches from Brown University, and they're after a certain type of player. Now, his exact words were, we need a guy to put the fear of God in the defenseman of the Ivy League. And that was kind of what I did, right? I was a hitter. I was really good at hitting, and I could, instill that fear. So my coach, this is what he's telling me. He's like, I got the perfect guy for you. There's just one major problem, right? He's laid up in the burn unit, and the future doesn't look promising. So he said, just call them. They want to talk to you. I know you got the time, right? So we take a chance. My parents write down the number and call this coach from Brown. And it was left very open-ended. He said, we're sorry to hear what happened. We wish you the best in recovery. And almost as a formality, he said, maybe we'll get to see you play one day down the road. And that was it. So we hung up the phone, and I remember getting really emotional with my mom and dad there at that moment, because I had worked my whole life to talk to one of these guys, right? An NCAA scout. My whole life, I had yet to even talk to one guy, right? They weren't exactly recruiting fighters to the NCAA. You can't fight, right? So I had finally done it, and look where I was. Look what I had done to myself. So again, I sat with that emotion for a little bit, and so that's when I started naturally asking why. So they're telling me I can't play hockey in a few months. Well, why? And trust me, there was a really good long list of reasons why. Infection was probably number one, right? The burn injuries are very susceptible to infection. I mean, I had open second-degree burns for, oh God, probably 6, 7, 8 months. They just wouldn't close, right? And if you're talking about I don't know, you guys probably wash your gear, but I never washed my gear once in my whole life. So you probably don't want to put a burn under that, right? So that was probably the number one risk. The skin grafts were going to be too limiting, too painful. They would take, again, years to fully heal, right? I had to wear a full bodysuit for 2 full years to help with the skin grafts. You can't sweat from those third-degree areas, right? So the third-degree burns, you burn through everything. Sweat glands, nerve glands, everything. I can't feel my grafts because everything's just, the burns are so deep, right? So if you're talking about playing a competitive sport like hockey and and your heart rate's getting up and you can't sweat properly, well, there's complications with being able to cool your body down and heart rate, right? And the list just went on and on. And in my head, being the naive 19, almost 20-year-old I was, I thought, basically you're telling me it's gonna hurt too much. And I thought, well, it sure as hell can't be worse than what I have just been through these past 2 weeks. Again, that was a little bit naive thinking, but that's what I thought. And I made a decision right there that I said, those aren't good enough reasons for me to just give up on this dream. And I made a promise to myself in that moment that I was willing to die, and I mean that literally, I was willing to die before giving up on this dream. So people ask me, how did you discover visualization? This is how. I was bedridden in a burn unit and I couldn't move. My body was out of commission, right? I didn't read a fancy book. I mean, that came later in my life, right? But I had heard of visualization and I figured that was my only way out to go chase this dream, right? So I started imagining everything I wanted, right? So that consisted of 4 things. So number 1, I knew I needed to get out of the hospital way sooner than they were telling me, right? They told me I'd be there all summer. So I started reframing the pain differently and almost welcoming the pain, because it hurt a lot, right? And instead of that, please no fear, again, I visualized welcoming it and like fuel for my cells. So I would visualize healing at like a cellular level and just imagine those 3rd-degree burn areas closing and healing. And then I would imagine walking out of the burn unit, the front doors of that burn unit, feeling the wind on my face and going on this journey and this comeback of a lifetime. Then I would imagine the season opener with the Vipers, right? Being with my teammates for the first time again, being in the locker room, going on the ice, hearing the crowd, right? Really trying to create this experience in my mind through the visualization. And we're going to talk about why that's important later, okay? And then the 4th thing, the guiding star of like this ending of this movie I was creating was the commitment letter to Brown. So I would obsess over this and just replay it over and over and over in my head of having that letter and having a pen in the other hand and just imagine that signature flowing on the page, feeling it, seeing that signature, okay? Now, I didn't realize the superpower that I was unlocking when I was doing this, right? And I effectively, again, what I didn't know at the time, I was able to almost remove myself from my current shitty reality into this other reality where I got to be whoever the hell I wanted, right? And everything started changing. And it, again, truly gave me a superpower. So I got out of that hospital in 6 weeks, which again was less than, or half the time that they told me that I would be there for. And I eventually played in that home opener in September, so about 3.5 months, 4 months after, and committed to Brown about 2 months after that. Now I'm skipping over a very large part of the recovery and the hell that next, I mean, forget about 6 months, really the next 1.5 years was. That's partly why I wrote a book, because it's all in there. But just to give you guys an idea, I had all these complications from this burn injury trying to play hockey, right? So I had this mindset, but you guys will learn this as you progress in life and you know, in hockey or whatever it is. The body is the governor. So the body's the one that tells us to stop, right? So my body was begging me to stop. So I had kidney stones the day after. You guys might not know what that is, but parents might. Has anyone had kidney stones? God, I hope not. Oh no, 2. Yeah, they're not fun, right? So kidney stones the day after I got released from VGH, this is a little bit of a funny story. I was seeing I wanted to see my girlfriend at the time, who's now my ex-wife, which is a whole other story that we won't get into. But I got released, I'm like, hey, I want to like, you know, go see her and say hi. And I'm in my wheelchair, I got my bag full of like burn bandages and creams and, you know, I won't get into all the details. But my dad drops me off there and he's like, I'll come get you in a couple days. I mean, I couldn't move, like I was in a wheelchair and I got around on the ground. I couldn't be upright for really longer than a minute because all the grafts on my legs would just bleed out because they were so fresh, right? So I couldn't walk. So I'm sure he's like probably not wanting to drop me off, but he did. And I woke up that night with this pain in my back, and I'm like, what the hell is this pain? Like, it's not burn pain. And anyways, long story short, I had kidney stones. But I think it's funny now, but I got wheeled into the emergency room in my wheelchair in the same hospital that I ran into 6 weeks prior. So remember, when this accident happened, there was nothing left of my clothes. So I was ass naked, bleeding, dirty, filthy, screaming at the top of my lungs. And I, you know, pictured the emergency room at whatever time it was, 1, 2 in the morning. And I was like to say, you probably got your screaming baby, maybe someone has chest pains, a guy picked a fight at the bar with the wrong dude and he needs to get cleaned up, and in comes this ass naked, screaming burnt dude. And I can imagine everyone was like, yeah, you can help this guy, right? So that was a little bit of an interesting story that it was the same hospital, right? But that was just the first of many complications. Again, I couldn't walk for another probably 6 weeks, 2 months. And once I started eventually trying to train, like forget about rehab, I was trying to train and skate. I could barely move, right? I had an emergency appendectomy 10 days before that home opener. So again, my body was just begging me to stop. It's like, hey, we're trying to heal from this major skin graft surgery, and here you are trying to play hockey. Like, we need to take a break. But again, this visualization practice, this guiding star I had, there was no other option for me. And I think about this all the time. You know, what if I would have given up? And I'm not necessarily advocating for anyone to defy doctors' orders, parents. That's not what I'm saying. It's more, don't ever let anyone tell you what you're capable of, or put limits for you in your life. Because I did that, I made that mistake. And if I would have given up, and trust me, I wanted to give up multiple times every single day that summer. But this visualization practice helped guide me through that, right? And be able to push through all this type of pain that I was dealing with, okay? So I go to Brown. Now, I still had never even thought about pro hockey at this point. Not even a thought, right? I went to Brown and I made it. I achieved my dream, my NHL. I didn't have the wherewithal at that age to think, hey, if I can do that, like, what else can I do? No, when you go through an experience like this, your perspective on life changes, right? So I just went and I just had a blast, man. I enjoyed the US college experience, and I worked my ass off on the ice, don't get me wrong. I played on the fourth line and away from the rink, I just had fun. Never pro hockey. And again, that obviously changed at some point, and I had this second, I guess, epiphany or fork in the road when my coach, I think it was actually my assistant coach from Brown, came up to me after our junior year. So I'm 24 years old now. And he pulls me aside and said, hey, you ever thought about playing pro hockey? And I laughed in his face. And I'm like, I've literally never thought about it. I mean, I've never talked to a scout. I don't have an agent. Everyone has agents at that point if they're gonna go play, right? And I said, no offense, I play on the fourth line in one of the worst teams in college. So, I've never thought about it. And he said, you know, I've never seen anyone hit the way you can hit. You can skate, I know you can fight from your junior days. And I really think if you just worked on your game, that you could have, you know, a solid 5-10 year career in the American League, the AHL, you guys know what that is, right? Yeah, and maybe even get a shot in the show one day, you never know. And I was kind of like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, thank you. I didn't think much of it. And I went home that night, and of course thought more about what he had said. And then it clicked, and I'm like, huh. Like, if I can do that, come back from the burn unit to play hockey again, when I was told that it was impossible, like, why can't I go play in the NHL? I mean, that seems easier, right, in the video you guys saw. It seems easier than what I had done previously. And so that's when I made the choice again. And for me, it's always started with the choice, and then that 100% commitment to that choice. So in that moment, and I had this talk with myself, and I asked myself, I'm like, you want to play in the NHL? And I opened my eyes and I said, well, yeah, let's do it then. And so this is when I really got the idea for the technique that I teach now in my business, and that's called cinematic mind mapping. And again, we're going to talk more about this, but really, I thought about my life and my journey as a movie. Right? So think about movies you guys have seen. And I would open up this movie in my visualization practice with as a young kid, but then in the burn unit, right? Kind of not reliving the night of the accident, but reliving the superpower that whole experience gave me. Because I knew if I could do that, I honestly could do anything I wanted or set my mind to, right? So I would then go into my senior year at Brown, imagine playing, and we're going to talk about this type of visualization, but just executing everything on the ice in every aspect of my game, dominating, right? I probably played 10 seasons in my head before the year had even started, okay? And then now the ending of the movie, my guiding star was the NHL. So the NHL contract, right? Imagine signing that and then walking down the tunnel for my first NHL game, again, really immersing myself in there, right? Seeing my jersey up in the stall, going down the tunnel, stepping onto the ice for the first time, hearing a crowd of 20,000 people, right? And again, not only did this instill such an intense belief and trust in myself, but the other part of this, again we'll talk about, is that what this practice does, it really drives home the non-negotiables and the habits and daily choices you make, because the reality is this isn't a sit on your ass and visualize your movie while you're on Snapchat and Instagram or whatever you kids are on these days, right? This is not how it works, right? So every time you live this movie, you come out of that experience and you think, whoa, that felt really good. That's really cool. I got to make sure I do everything in my power to make sure that happens because I like that version of me, right? So everything you do, every choice you do starts aligning with that vision. And that's true for life, not just, forget about hockey. I've used this in lots of areas other than hockey, right? So I went from, because of this practice, in 6 months, I went from no one in the NHL having a damn clue who I was to everyone knowing who I was. Like I was shot out of a cannon my senior year and basically had my pick at 8 different teams coming out of college. And a bit of a funny ending to this whole still part of the story is I called my parents naturally when I signed with the Canucks out of Brown. And you gotta remember, I didn't tell anyone about this plan I had, right? It was kind of in a way sacred to me, and until it had actually happened, there wasn't really anything to share, right? So again, I naturally called my parents, and they knew I was having a good year and that I might give the pro hockey thing a shot for a year or two in you know, the minor leagues to say I did it kind of thing. So I called them and said, hey, you know how I told you I was talking with a few pro teams? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, by pro I meant the NHL. And there was a stretch of silence on the phone, and I won't repeat what my dad said, but he basically said, F off. Like, what do you really want to tell us? So he didn't believe me. And I repeated myself, and I'm like, Dad, I'm serious. I just signed with the Canucks. I'm flying to Winnipeg in 2 days to get my feet wet with the Moose. And he repeated himself and said, they didn't believe me, so that's a little bit of a funny story. It came out of nowhere. It really did. And now I went on to have a 5.5-year career split between the Canucks and the Capitals. Unfortunately, that was cut short due to a career-ending neck injury. And life after hockey for me, guys, was arguably harder. And it was a tough time, right? You talk about that loss of identity, right? I was a hockey player for 30 years, and it just ended like that. So I was totally lost. I didn't know who the hell I was anymore or what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. You know, I was going through a divorce, my dad got sick, and it just all happened like in a really short window. And this visualization practice, I'm so passionate about teaching it because not only did, again, it get me out of that burn unit to come play hockey again when I was told that it wasn't possible, right? Got me to Brown and later the NHL, but it also saved my life in a dark time after hockey when I hit rock bottom and realized, hey, I need to create and write a new movie for what I want my life to look like. Not as Aaron Volpatti, the hockey player, but this new Aaron Volpatti, right? Who was I going to be? What did I want to do? So we're going to move into the workshop part of this, right? And explore, again, this visualization technique that I want to share with you guys. So usually we would do a break, but why don't we do maybe like some Q&A for like 5-10 minutes? If you guys have any questions about what I just shared with you, and then we'll get into the workshop, and I'll teach you the hows and whys about the visualization piece, okay? Sound good? And if you guys don't have questions, we'll just get right into it. Yeah? I was pretty much fourth line. Yeah, I didn't get paid to score the goals. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I did play on the first line really, really briefly with Ovechkin and Backstrom in Washington. So we weren't doing that well, and the coach shook things up, and I came to the rink one day, and I'm like, oh, shit, I saw my name. I'm like, that can't be right. And start the game, and it only lasted like 2 shifts. I probably dumped the puck in, and Ovi got back to the bench, and I think he was probably like, yeah, get this guy for a while. But no, I was primarily fourth line. That, you know what, that's a good question, and I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's my sister. Yeah. Oh, I was going to do this one for a book giveaway, so why don't we do that? I have a few books to give away, and we'll do some fun stat stuff maybe later, and maybe some volunteers. But why don't we start with that? Actually, when we do that, we'll just get everyone who gets one up at the end. So I have some books here. Parents, people have asked me, like, would you let your son read it? And I'm like, he's younger, but even if he was like 12, I'd be like, So maybe, I've had kids your age read it. It's mature content, let's just put it that way. So you do what you want with that. Bedtime reading, or you just let him go at it. It's more like part 2 of the book, which is like life. You know, there's some mature stuff in there. The burn stuff is just very graphic, so if you can handle that, go for it. Anyway, so we'll do that for the first giveaway. Who can guess how many career goals I scored? Yeah. Oh, I wish. No. Ooh, close. How about you back there? Yeah, yeah. Ooh, no, not quite. 5. 5 big ones.